trilogy to determine the baddest man on the planet, Miocic versus Daniel Cormier, is upon us, and I'm here to break it down and try and predict who's going to win and how he's going to do that. Now, I've done this previously just one time, and that was for the Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson fight, and Justin Gaethje showed up as a completely new fighter in that fight. Now, obviously, I'm not clairvoyant. I only try and predict based on what I've seen so far from the two fighters. So, without wasting further time, let's get right into it. The first thing that we're going to talk about is obviously the IPO game. Now, if Daniel Cormier comes into this fight with his IPO game, there is no chance that Miocic is leaving that octagon still the heavyweight champion. I've heard that DC has been training really hard and has been growing his fingernails so that he's able to eye-poke Miocic 2 feet apart. And once he's able to tear Stipe's retina, it's game over for Miocic unless he's been training with his twin brother Michael Bisping to master the art of blind fighting. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is striking. Stipe is a former Golden Gloves boxing champion, while DC is no Golden Gloves boxing champ but has shown that he can hold his own on his feet against elite level strikers. DC won the first fight on his feet, and most people would agree that he was winning the second one as well until Stipe made that adjustment and started landing those body shots. Stipe will have a better chance of outstriking DC if he utilizes his 8-inch reach advantage and his footwork, which should be able to frustrate DC, which would lead to DC making mistakes. DC, on the other hand, will find success if he is able to close the distance and strike with Stipe in the clinch. As a shorter guy, DC would be able to generate more power in the clinch, while Stipe would have very little room to work with. Also, if DC uses his low kicks to slow Stipe down, it will prove to be critical to the outcome of the fight. I'm going to give a slight advantage to Stipe in the striking department as long as he keeps moving and doesn't let his ego get the better of him and engage in the metaphorical phone booth fight. Therefore, Stipe gets an 8.5 out of 10 while Daniel Cormier gets an 8 out of 10. To say that this fight is a standard wrestler versus striker match would be foolish because Stipe is a former NCAA Division I wrestler and DC, as we have seen, is no slouch in the striking department. Obviously, DC is the better pure wrestler and Stipe the better pure striker, but DC can hold his own on the feet and Stipe can hold his own on the ground. With that said, it is also no secret that DC is one of the greatest wrestlers that we have ever seen with excellent takedowns. Just go take a look the way he took down Alexander Gustafsson and in their second fight, Stipe Miocic. Usually when DC takes you down, you stay there until the end of the round or the fight because DC can end the fight on the ground not just with ground and pound but also with a rear naked choke, and if one somehow manages to get back up, till that point he's so tired that DC either takes him down again or just fuck you. Stipe, on the other hand, usually relies on his striking, but as we have seen in the fight against Francis Ngannou, he can also mix things up. If this fight goes to the ground, DC is the most likely winner, but we shouldn't be writing off Stipe that easily because we have seen him getting back to his feet after being taken down by DC. And at one point in the second fight, even took DC down. Now that was mostly because DC was tired, but it still counts. So to put a numerical number on the ground game of both these fighters, Daniel Cormier gets 10 out of 10 for his ground game while Stipe Miocic gets 7 out of 10. I believe the most important aspect of the fight game is the cardio and conditioning of the fighter. It doesn't matter if you are Israel Adesanya on the feet, Khabib Nurmagomedov on the ground, and have the knockout power of Francis Ngannou if you gas out in 2 minutes. Which is why I believe cardio is going to play a major role in this fight just like any other fight. Daniel Cormier has won the distance in 2 5-round fights. One was a loss to John Jones and the other one was a split decision against the mauler Alexander Gustafsson. Daniel Cormier tends to gas out in the latter rounds. Even in his fight against Stipe, the second fight that is, he started to gas out later in the third round. Stipe Miocic, on the other hand, has a seemingly much better gas tank than Daniel Cormier and can keep up a high pace for the entirety of the 5 rounds. So if the current heavyweight champion manages to take this fight into deeper waters, his likelihood of winning this fight increases significantly. Also, if Stipe manages to land a few good body shots, it would deplete the gas tank of DC even faster, which is why Stipe gets 9 out of 10 for his cardio and DC gets 7 out of 10. Now let's talk about the knockout power of these two fighters. None of these two possess the knockout power of Francis Ngannou, but then again, who does? Out of these two though, Stipe possesses that one-punch knockout power, while DC mostly TKOs people after tiring them out or rear naked chokes them. Yes, DC knocked out Stipe in the first fight, but that was mostly due to the eye poke, and most people believe it was because of Stipe's previous fight against Francis Ngannou, and it is hard to argue with that because Stipe took a lot of shots to the head in the second fight and wasn't even rocked. Stipe Miocic, on the other hand, has KO'd the likes of JDS, Alistair Overeem, and Daniel Cormier himself, which is why Stipe gets 8.5 out of 10 for his knockout power, while DC gets 7 out of 10. Now let's talk about the chin on these two guys. Both of them are very resilient, but both of them have knocked each other out as well. Daniel Cormier has been officially knocked out only once, and that was by Stipe Miocic. That head kick by Picograms Jones did not count, while Stipe Miocic has been knocked out twice, once by Daniel Cormier and once by Stephen Struve. The last time we saw him, he was getting his egg scrambled by Ben Rothwell. Both of these guys have as solid chins as they come, and both of them have been in the octagon with some killers and came out victorious on the other end, which is why Daniel Cormier gets 9 out of 10 for his chin, while Stipe Miocic gets 8.5 out of 10. So to sum it all up, Stipe needs to stick and move and get this fight into the 4th and 5th round, while DC needs to stop Stipe from doing so by clinching with him, taking him down, and try to finish this fight in the first 3 rounds. And if he cannot do that, he can always pull out the ace card and poke Stipe in the eye.